My brother laughed at me. "You'll never own anything nice," he said while pointing at my old car. I smiled quietly, and 2 years later I pulled up to dinner driving a brand new one. I still remember the sound of the laughter before anything else. It wasn't the gentle kind that fills a room when people are sharing a good story. No, this was sharper, mocking. It cut straight through me, and it started with my own brother. We were standing in the driveway at my parents' house, plates of barbecue still warm in our hands, when he looked at my car, my old, dented, rust-bitten sedan, and shook his head. "You'll never own anything nice," he said loud enough for the whole family to hear. He even pointed at it like it was the punchline to a bad joke. For a moment, everything went silent. Then the chuckles began. My cousins joined in, my uncle tried to hide his grin, and even my mom smirked like she couldn't help herself. I stood there, smiling tightly, holding it together while my face burned so hot I thought it might leave a mark. That car. I'd worked 2 jobs just to keep it alive. It wasn't pretty, but it got me where I needed to go. I had planned on explaining that. But I saw the way he looked at me, self-satisfied, like he was handing down some kind of truth about me that everyone had secretly agreed with all along. And so I said nothing. I put my plate down, my hands steady, and I let the laughter pass. On the outside I was quiet. Inside, though, something shifted. That night, long after everyone had gone home and the smell of grilled corn and charred meat had faded from my clothes, I sat in my car in the dark. The same car he mocked. The roof leaked when it rained, and the left mirror was held on with duct tape. The seats were worn down to the foam in places, but it was mine. I stared at the steering wheel, and my own hands gripping it until my knuckles turned white, and I thought about every word he said. "You'll never own anything nice." The way he said it, like it was a fact written somewhere, like it was part of who I was. I went over the whole day in my head, watching it like a movie frame by frame, how people had looked at me after he said it, the awkward smirks, the way nobody stepped in. Even my mom had just let it hang there, like it wasn't cruel. That's when I realized it wasn't just about a car. It was about everything. All my life, I had been scraping by, watching other people climb while I stayed at the bottom, convincing myself I was patient, that my time would come. But as I sat there with the engine ticking softly under the hood, something new settled in me. I promised myself, quietly, fiercely, that I would never feel that small again. The next morning I woke up with that same sentence echoing in my head like an alarm clock. I didn't even need coffee, the sting of it jolted me awake. Work that day was the same routine it always was, long hours, low pay, the faint smell of oil and metal clinging to my shirt, but it felt different. Every time I bent to pick something up, every time I caught my reflection in a grease-smudged window, I heard him again. It burned, but it also started to harden something in me. That night, instead of collapsing on the couch, I sat at my kitchen table with a notebook. I wrote one sentence at the top. "In 2 years, my life will look nothing like this." And I began to plan. At first, the plan was small. Pick up a side job. Cut every expense that wasn't necessary. Pay off the lingering debts that hung over me like fog. But the longer I wrote, the bigger it got. I started searching job postings online, studying until late at night, and signing up for certifications I couldn't even afford at the time, paying with whatever scraps I could gather. For the first time in years, I didn't just go through the motions, I started to grind. Every morning I woke up an hour earlier to study before work. Every weekend I worked odd jobs, mowing lawns, hauling junk, even fixing broken furniture for neighbors. I sold things I didn't need, learned to cook cheap meals so I wasn't wasting money, and I saved every dollar like it was the last one I'd ever see. The funny thing is, the world didn't suddenly open doors for me because I was trying. It pushed back. The company I worked for announced layoffs, and for a week I thought I was done for. My car's alternator died right in the middle of winter, and I had to fix it myself in a freezing driveway with fingers so numb I could barely turn the bolts. There were nights when I wanted to throw the notebook away and just give in. But every single time, without fail, I thought about that barbecue. About his voice carrying across the yard, and the laughter that followed. And I pushed on. 2 years is a strange stretch of time. It crawls when you're stuck in it, but looking back, it feels like someone pressed fast forward. By the end of that second year, I had moved up in my job, twice. I had paid off every cent of debt. And I had just signed the papers for something I hadn't let myself imagine before, a brand new car. Not a flashy sports car, but a sleek, deep blue sedan with leather seats and a smooth hum when you turn the key. Mine. I knew exactly when I was going to show it to him. The invitation came from my mom, just like the last time. "Family dinner this Sunday," she said over the phone, her voice light, like nothing had ever happened. I almost smiled. I'd been waiting for those words. For a week, I timed everything. I had already picked up my car from the dealership, a deep blue beauty that still smelled like new leather, and I made sure to keep it spotless. Every evening after work, I'd take a cloth and wipe away invisible dust from the hood, just imagining that moment, the one where they'd all see. By Sunday afternoon, my stomach was a knot of anticipation and something that felt almost like stage fright. I took the long way to my parents' house, the car gliding like a dream through streets I had once trudged down in that old, battered sedan. I saw the driveway before they saw me. Everyone was already there: my mom's silver SUV, my dad's old truck, a few cousins' cars. And parked neatly in the corner, the same smug red pickup that belonged to my brother, Nathan. I slowed as I turned in, not too slow, just enough for people standing in the yard to hear the hum of the engine. Heads began to turn. My cousin Ben was the first to notice. He nudged someone next to him, and I saw a hand go up, pointing. I pulled up smooth as silk and killed the engine. For a second, there was silence. No laughter this time, just a kind of quiet surprise. I got out and shut the door with that soft, satisfying click that new cars have. Nathan was standing on the porch steps, his drink halfway to his mouth. I didn't rush. I took my time walking up, feeling all those eyes on me, every step like a drumbeat in my chest. No one said anything yet, but the shock on their faces was enough to taste. It was Nathan who broke the silence first. Of course it was. He lowered his cup, cleared his throat, and forced a laugh that sounded thin, like he was trying to catch up to the moment that had already slipped past him. "Nice rental," he said with a smirk that didn't quite reach his eyes. I smiled, calm, steady. "Not a rental," I said, keeping my voice even. That was all it took for everyone else to realize it too. My dad squinted at the plates, the dealer's tag, the shine of the paint. "Is that yours?" he asked. I just nodded. Nathan took a step closer, trying to reclaim that easy confidence he'd had 2 years ago. "So what's the story, huh? Finally saved up enough lunch money?" The words hung there, desperate. I looked right at him and, for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small. "You remember what you said to me 2 years ago?" I asked. He blinked. "What?" "You pointed at my old car," I said, my voice clear so everyone could hear. "And you told me I'd never own anything nice." The porch had gone completely still. The only sound was the breeze moving through the trees behind the house. I took one slow step closer until we were face to face. "Well," I said, "I've been thinking about those words every single day since then. And I just wanted to say, thank you. Because every mile I worked, every hour I didn't quit. I pictured this moment right here." Behind him, I heard a low chuckle from my cousin Ben. Then another from my uncle. The tide was shifting. I smiled, small but deliberate. "Turns out, Nathan, I do own something nice. And I drove it here tonight." For a heartbeat, the air was thick enough to touch. Nathan opened his mouth, then shut it again. His face went red, not the quick flush of embarrassment, but the slow, creeping kind that spreads up from the collar when someone realizes they've lost control of the room. And then, from behind him, came a laugh. Not mine. My Uncle Robert's. It wasn't a loud laugh, just a short, surprised bark of it, like he couldn't hold it in. Ben started next. Then my mom, of all people, covered her mouth with her hand, trying to hide the smile that was spreading there. It rolled through them like a wave, soft at first, and then picking up. Nathan glared at them, but it was too late. The same way his words had been the spark for everyone's laughter at my expense 2 years ago, now his silence was the fuel for theirs. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. You see, the difference between you and me, I said, still steady, is that when someone knocks me down, I don't stay there. I get back up. I work. And I don't forget. I let that sit for a moment, then added quietly, you gave me all the motivation I could ever need. And I just wanted to return the favor, by proving you wrong in front of the same people who laughed with you that day. Nathan's jaw tightened. Come on, man, he said, forcing another weak chuckle. It was just a joke. Don't tell me you've been holding a grudge over a stupid car. A joke? I said, tilting my head. Do you remember how you said it? Because I do. Everyone here remembers how loud you made sure it was. You wanted me to feel small, Nathan. And you succeeded. I gestured at the new car, gleaming in the fading light. But this, I said softly, this is what came out of that moment. So really, I should thank you for the free motivation. I couldn't have done it without you. The porch erupted again, not cruel laughter, but the kind that's rich with the sweetness of justice finally served. My dad actually shook his head and laughed too, muttering something about how he couldn't believe I'd pulled it off. Nathan looked around like he just realized the ground beneath him had shifted. 2 years ago, everyone had been on his side. Tonight, nobody was. I walked past him into the house, and for the first time in a long while, it felt like the weight I'd been carrying had finally been set down. Inside, the dining room felt strangely different that evening. The table was the same checkered cloth, the same smell of my mom's roast chicken filling the air, but the energy had shifted. Where before I'd walked into these dinners feeling like a shadow in my own family, this time there was a quiet murmur of respect that followed me in. I found my seat at the far end, took my time settling in, and noticed how conversations that used to flow right past me now angled toward me. Cousins asked about the car, my uncle asked how I'd managed to save up. Even my dad, who rarely commented on anything other than football, leaned forward and said, "That must have taken some planning." Nathan sat across the table, his fork idle, shoulders tight. He kept trying to change the topic, but it never stuck. Every time the conversation slipped back to my car, to how clean it looked, to how I'd done it. I didn't brag. I just told them the truth. That I'd been working side jobs, everything from shoveling snow to helping an older neighbor fix up his porch. That I'd spent nights learning new skills, studying for exams, applying for better roles. That there were months when I barely slept because I was trying to move my life 1 inch at a time. While I spoke, I wasn't looking for applause. I wasn't looking for anyone's approval either. But as I told it, I could feel a sort of hush settling over the table, a weight that wasn't there before. Because they all remembered that night 2 years ago. They remembered me standing there with my plate in my hand, smiling as everyone laughed. They remembered how Nathan's words had landed like stones. And now they were hearing what those words had cost, and built. In the middle of the meal, while everyone else was talking, I just sat there for a moment, taking it all in. The warm light above the table, the clinking of forks and glasses, the hum of conversation around me, it all felt surreal. I had imagined this scene so many times during those long nights, me walking into the same house, the same dinner, but this time different. Stronger. And here it was. I glanced across at Nathan, who avoided my eyes, fiddling with his napkin. There was a time when that would have given me a rush of satisfaction, but in that moment, I realized it wasn't even about revenge anymore. It was about the promise I had made to myself in the dark, sitting in that broken-down car with the heater barely working, that I would change. That I would not always be the guy people pitied. And in that small dining room, surrounded by the same people who once laughed at me, I understood that I had kept that promise. Dinner wound down slowly, as it always did in that house, dessert plates half empty, coffee poured, people leaning back in their chairs. But I could feel it coming, the moment Nathan would try to corner me. He'd been quiet through most of the meal, quieter than I'd ever seen him. Every now and then, he'd look like he wanted to say something, but then someone else would speak first. I let it go. I wanted him to stew in it, to really feel the way I had felt that day 2 years ago. Eventually, the crowd began to thin. My aunts and uncles left first, then cousins, leaving just the immediate family. My mom started stacking dishes in the kitchen, and my dad disappeared to the living room with a plate of pie. That's when Nathan finally spoke. "Hey," he said, his voice low. I stood, sliding my chair back slowly, and turned to face him. He was leaning against the doorway, arms crossed, a posture that was supposed to look casual but just made him seem cornered. "Look," he said, "I didn't mean it back then. You know that, right? I was just messing with you. We all joke around." I nodded, not saying a word, letting the silence do the work. "It's just," he shrugged, fumbling for words. "You were so serious about that old car. It was falling apart, man. I didn't think you'd. Remember?" I said, cutting him off gently. "You didn't think I'd remember?" He blinked, caught. "I remember everything about that day," I said. "I remember every laugh. I remember the way you pointed at me like I was a joke." His mouth opened like he wanted to protest, but I held up a hand. "I'm not angry anymore," I said, my voice steady. "In fact, I'm glad you said it. Because you were right about one thing back then, I didn't own anything nice. I had nothing except that old car and a whole lot of frustration. But what you didn't count on was that I'd take those words and use them. Every single day." I stepped closer so we were face to face, just like in the driveway earlier. "The thing is, Nathan," I said, quiet enough that only he could hear, "you tried to make me smaller that day. And all you did was make me work until I didn't fit in that box you built for me." His eyes dropped, just for a moment. I leaned back. "So if you want to keep making jokes, go ahead. But maybe next time you think about pointing at someone and saying they'll never have anything, remember tonight." Behind us, my mom called from the kitchen, "Coffee for the road?" I smiled and shook my head. "No, thanks. I've got a better ride home now." Then I walked out, slow and steady, feeling every step lighten as I moved toward the door. Outside, the night air was cool and the sky was full of stars. My car sat in the driveway, gleaming under the porch light. For a moment I just stood there, hand on the door, and let the satisfaction sink in. The door closed behind me, muffling the low voices from inside. I stood there for a few seconds, letting the cool air settle on my face. The night was so quiet I could hear the ticking of the engine as it cooled, a soft metallic heartbeat. For the first time in years, I wasn't in a rush to leave. I leaned against the car and just looked up. The sky was clear, the kind of sharp, endless black that only happens on winter nights. And it struck me, how much of these last 2 years had been like this, dark, cold, and still. But I had kept moving anyway. I slid into the driver's seat and closed the door with that soft click. The smell of new leather filled the cabin. I sat there for a long moment, hands on the steering wheel, staring at my reflection in the glass. It was strange to see myself like this. I looked tired, sure. 2 years of grinding doesn't just vanish from your face overnight. But there was something else there, too. Something I hadn't seen in a long time, a kind of calm that comes when you finally know you can rely on yourself. I thought about all the nights I'd come home from work, too exhausted to eat but still staying up late, taking courses, scrolling through job boards, practicing skills until my eyes blurred. I thought about the times I fixed other people's houses, cut other people's lawns, while my own car sat broken in the driveway. And I thought about the day I paid off the last of my debts, sitting in my small apartment with a bowl of ramen, smiling at the zero on the screen. None of that had been easy. And none of it had been visible to anyone else. That was the thing, I realized. Nobody sees you when you're climbing. They only notice when you reach the top of something, when you have something to show. And then they all wonder how you did it so suddenly, as if the work hadn't been there all along. I started the engine. The smooth hum filled the car, a sound so different from the wheezing rattle of the old one. I pulled out of the driveway slowly, the gravel crunching under the tires, and glanced once in the mirror. The house, the porch, the faces behind the window, all of it shrank away into the dark. The road home was long and empty, just trees on either side and the headlights cutting 2 clean lines ahead of me. As I drove, I thought about what had really changed. Yes, there was a new car, a better job, a little more security. But more than anything, I had learned that sometimes humiliation can be the sharpest kind of fuel. It hurts. It burns. But if you aim it right, it can take you farther than anyone expects. I gripped the wheel a little tighter and smiled. I got home late, but I didn't feel tired. I left the car in the driveway and just sat there for a while, listening to the engine ticking in the quiet. It felt like a full-circle moment, the same way I'd sat in my old car 2 years ago, staring at the steering wheel and promising myself that things would be different. And now they were. The funny thing is, I didn't even feel angry at Nathan anymore. Not really. What he said that day hurt, yes, but in a strange way, it had given me something no one else could have given me, a reason to bet on myself. If there's one thing these 2 years taught me, it's that being underestimated can be a gift, if you let it be. People will laugh. They'll doubt you. And sometimes, like that night in my parents' driveway, they'll make you feel smaller than you ever thought possible. But if you can hold on to that feeling, if you can turn it into something steady instead of letting it crush you, it can push you farther than you think. So now, whenever I see someone struggling, I remember how it felt to be on the other side of that laugh. And I hope they know, it doesn't matter where you start. It matters that you keep going. I stepped out of the car, locked it, and walked up to my door. Behind me, the deep blue paint gleamed faintly under the streetlight. I didn't even look back. I didn't need to. I knew it was there. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt like I had finally arrived.